Welcome to AFI Fest 2020, presented by Audi. I'm Sarah Harris. I'm the Director of Programming for AFI Festivals. Thanks so much for joining us. First, I want to thank all of our supporters of the festival, including our presenting sponsor, Audi, and all of our AFI members and you, our audience. I'm here today with our Director of Jacinta, Jessica Earnshaw, and welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first, congratulations on the film. It is such an incredible debut. When I first saw this film months and months ago, I was floored, and it's been kind of haunting me ever since. It's just a really powerful story.
Thank you.
Of course, they're all kind of connected, but the first one is obviously like meeting Jacinta, and some of your work kind of led you to meeting her. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So before this film, I was mainly doing documentary photography, like photojournalism type stuff. And I was doing a project on aging in prison, which was funded through a grant back in 2015. And I was in Maine State Prison where I met Jacinta and Rosemary when I was photographing that project. And I spent weeks there, all full days, and I was photographing this elderly woman who was friends with Rosemary. So that's how I met Rosemary. And I just spent so much time there, talking to the women, hearing their stories, and I was interested in, following women who have, so many of these women were like my age, who had like traumatic experiences in their past. A lot of them were addicted to various things. And it just seemed crazy to me that we incarcerate people who have so much trauma in their backgrounds, and that led to so much of their drug use in the first place. So anyways, I met Rosemary and Jacinta, and I started following them, thinking it was going to be a photo essay at the beginning, and then I thought it was going to be a short film, and then I kept filming, and then it became too much to be a short film.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of touched on this, but I think what's really interesting is, there are other films or other documentaries that kind of talk about the generational cycle of addiction or incarceration or trauma, but this in particular is focused on women, and that relationship with mothers that I think is really, really interesting. It was like when working on the photo essay, before kind of realizing that Jacinta and Rosemary were this own project, has that been part of your work in the past, and kind of easily knowing this is the story that I really want to tell?
No, the aging project was mainly just following people who are elderly in prison and being a fly on the wall for their daily lives. So they're similar in the sense that I really embed myself with my subjects and spend a lot of time, so I catch everyday moments. And so for that project, I had been coming into the prison like at 6 a.m, leaving 6 p.m, which is what I continued to do on the Jacinta project. But no, I mean, I hadn't, so when I met Jacinta and Rosemary, I mean, I saw them together. Their interaction with each other and their banter back and forth was so striking to me. Like, I found it so interesting, just how close they were. They were like best friends. And I was really attracted to the story for that reason. I wanted to know how Jacinta ended up in prison with her mother. I really liked Rosemary, and then when I met Jacinta, I really liked her too. And it was mainly just their energy with each other. I was just really intrigued on how did Jacinta end up here with her mother. That's, I don't know, sometimes you just meet people and I didn't have the story worked out. I just met them and I knew there was something there, basically.
Yeah. Jacinta in particular, she is so articulate and such a kind of, like you're saying, a magnetic force that she draws you into like very quickly, I think. So
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and your background in photography, I think really, lends itself to the intimacy of the film. It's incredibly striking, and I think you do such a lovely job of capturing very, very intimate moments. How was that kind of approach of like you said, you thought it was that Jacinta Rosemary might be as one kind of project, and then transitioning to short story to feature filmmaking. Talk a little bit about like deciding, how long did that take for you to realize, oh no, this is so much bigger?
I'd say I had to pretty quickly make the decision to film more than photograph, because it's so hard to do both. You're constantly like, because the process of like looking for moments is very similar, but like you lose, like if I photograph, sometimes I would photograph a moment between them, and I lost that moment for the film, And so I decided pretty quickly, I was like, you know what, I need to focus on the filming of this. And because I couldn't get their energy together, I couldn't get the sweetness and like the little moments in just photography. I think that was what made me want to film it. Interestingly enough though, there was this moment where, so for my Aging in Prison project, I followed these men and women around, and I attached wireless mics to them. So I had audio of their stories as I photographed them. When I first approached this project, I did something very similar. I was attaching, when I met Rosemary and Jacinta, I wanted to record their story. So I sat them down, and instead of using the mic I had been using, that was just straight audio, I filmed them talking. And I don't know why I did that. Like I wasn't planning on doing video at all at that moment, but I had this like 2 or 3 hour interview of them sitting next to each other talking. And that's really when I decided, because I realized that the way they were interacting in those moments was so powerful. But it was really I think in the course of filming them, I realized that there were so many little moments that I would pick up. Like Jacinta spoke about how her mother had taught her how to fight. Yeah. And then we're outside, and see, this is not in the film because I photographed it. So, like, it haunts me. But she jumps on Jacinta on the picnic table, and she holds her down. And in the exact same way that she did that to Caylynn later in the film, it was it was mirroring, and I just was like, I can't be picking. And I also need to have the camera on all the time, because I didn't know what moments were significant until they happened. You know what I mean? Like, so I just started filming everything. And then I started catching those moments.
The complexity of their relationship and their bond, and how they're dependent on each other, both emotionally, but also with this, substance-based kind of crime and addiction. And, the codependence is so strong. How difficult was it to peel back the layers of that relationship, and watching them interact, and kind of digging a little bit deeper as to why that is? Like, talk a little bit about that.
At first, I just did a lot of interviews with Jacinta and Rosemary in the prison. I was with them probably about 2 weeks every day until Jacinta got out. So I did a lot of interviews there, where I asked Jacinta about her background, I asked Rosemary about, regrets, X, Y, and Z. And then when I got out, I would interview Rick, her dad, and I found that I was having a really difficult time I got a lot from the interviews as far as understanding Jacinta a lot more, based on, she would say, growing up, a babysitter would, be someone maybe off the street, or her mom would trade cigarettes or whatever for babysitter, stories like this that gave me a bit of an idea. But when I think when I got out, there were these timelines that were really hard to, Jacinta would tell me her memory of things, Rosemary would tell me her memory, and then Rick would tell me his memory. And it was just all, sometimes they overlap, sometimes the dates were off, and I had a really difficult time really understanding where Jacinta was when. And so, and Jacinta didn't have a lot of childhood memories with Rosemary. And, but then I would hear that she sometimes would see her, and, it was just very difficult. So I spent a lot of time researching. I mean, as far as talking to old teachers, I found kids who were in grade 6 with her, and juvenile probation or probation officers. It was just all over the place to try to track where she was when. So I created this document for myself where I tracked Jacinta's age, and I put in all the things I knew and I had found out in order to figure out where she was when and what had happened when. And then, as far as when I actually started following her within her addiction, that was when I feel like I learned the most about Jacinta. It's one thing to be told certain things, and then I just saw it all happen. And I also had a way better sense of her relationships with her family members. And then also, and then later on, kind of hearing more about the trauma that Jacinta had experienced with Rosemary. That was not something that I had heard till like 11 months in to filming. Wow. So it was like peeling back to an onion constantly. Mm-hmm. And that those were conversations that I had with Jacinta very early on, where I was like, are you all right? Are you okay with me? Digging really deep, trying to understand how things happen, when things happened, all this kind of stuff. And I think Jacinta in some ways wanted, I think she wanted to understand these things for herself, I think the conversations that we had were cathartic for her. I mean, nobody in, so few of these women have therapy, and I'm not a therapist, but I think it's helpful to talk things out and just kind of try to figure out,
I think it's such a process, and the fact that it's 3 years, clearly you're learning little bits and connecting the dots over that course of time. I think the other thing that you kind of touched on, which I'd love to hear more about, is the ethics of this, obviously. Yes. And, especially with documentary, there's always a conversation about the ethics of approaching your subject and the relationship. And clearly, in this situation, when you're following her down that path, I don't know, I'm curious to hear kind of what you were thinking in that space, in that headspace of, for yourself as a filmmaker, saying, this is professionally what I'm doing, and this is how I'm caring about my subject as a person. And I think one of the hardest things probably, I would imagine, watching her detox and then relapse, that, to be that, and to, know where to draw a line in a very space.
I think it was such a progression, this project, that I hadn't ever intended to do a project about addiction. I know that sounds weird, because I met all these women who had addiction in the prison, but it really was her relationship with Rosemary, and then hearing her talk about her daughter, those relationships, in my life, I have I identified with Jacinta in her feelings of responsibility for her mother, because I have a similar type of dynamic in my family. So those were kind of the things that really pulled me to them. But I think I spent so much time with her leading up to the first time she relapsed. So I had been with her consecutively 30 days. I would get there even when she was released. I would see her I would get to her sober house at 6 in the morning, or not 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, stay until, the evening, and I would travel in her car with her. There was a lot of trust that developed.
Yeah.
But within that period of time, there was also and on my end, just a feeling of, I just really wanted her, her dreams, the same dreams that she had, I really wanted her to be able to, beat this, or just, remain sober and have a relationship with her daughter. So yeah, when she first used, which was right after she saw Caylynn, I mean, it was really difficult. I think it was really, obviously you saw Jacinta, that's what happened. She was in tears over it, you know. Mm-hmm. But on my end, I think as a filmmaker, I continued to film those first couple times, not knowing really where it was going. And I also at that point still had been considering this as a short film. And I mean, we had a lot of conversations about it. I mean, for me, I actually wasn't sure I could continue working on the project after that happened, because it was so heartbreaking for me, like, to witness that, because I care so much about her. And it's not like it just happened, like she used and then she just started to use like this. It was kind of like she used and then a couple days would go by and she would not be, and then she would like stumble again. And it was just, so yeah, we had conversations about it where I wasn't sure if I should continue, and I wasn't sure where she was at with it. But ultimately it came down to the film's not going to be, it wasn't going to be purely about addiction. It was going to be about her and her family and her relationships. And I knew in my heart that I can pick and choose what we're going to use in the edit, but I did feel like I needed to have the camera running all the time, because if someone, you know, calls in or whatever, it's like, it was just me. I didn't have a crew with me. It was just me and Jacinta. And, we had a lot of conversations about it. And ultimately Jacinta was like, you know, she wants to get out of this herself. And she also has had so many friends who have died, and it's not, she feels stuck, you know? And I think for her, it was like, if I can save a life, if I can help in some way, if we can use this. And it was very collaborative. I mean, in the sense that Jacinta and I really talked through everything. And I really tried to figure out, like, when, you know, don't film this, you know, like there were a lot of times I was not filming and I was just consoling her. But I think, you know, I think on the ethical side of things, there is this, there have been times where people, I think earlier on when we were pitching the project, where people would be like, well, if you're filming, like, wouldn't that make her want to use, or like, is she using because you are having
right, she's on. Yeah,
she's on. And I know that's not true, because she was so, that was on our relationship. Like, she felt like me, at the beginning, after we had some conversations about it, Jacinta didn't, she was embarrassed and she felt so much shame over using, you know, and she felt like she had let me down. Like, that was the feeling that was going on, you know? And I was like, really trying to hold it together to be like, can I continue to do this? A person who is using is going to feel so much shame and guilt over that it's like, I wanted her to know that I'm still here with you, and I still care about you, and I still see you, you know? And I think regardless if I'm there or not, it doesn't mean that Jacinta just like doesn't have an issue, you know, doesn't have this addiction. And at first, you know, so I ended up going back to New York, because I was basically funding this out of my own pocket. So I had to go back to New York to do a job. And I came back up, and Jacinta was, I could tell in her, the way she was speaking to me, that like, everything's going to be good. Like, I'm like, I didn't use, you know, she was like trying to like, she wanted the dream, and she felt like I wanted it too. And so she was trying to like appease this idea that we had of a success story. You hear her at the end of the film where she says to me, you know, it wasn't the success that she thought. That's based on our earlier conversations, where she was like, we had both thought it was going to be something and it wasn't. But I think there's just a lot of trust. It's hard to explain. In the film, it's so compressed, but there was so much time spent that, I mean, I shot at least 250 hours or something in the first 9 months. Wow. And it was like, and it was just a lot, it was a lot of shooting, but it also like, Jacinta has said that in some ways, she felt like with my presence there, she was actually using less than she would if I hadn't been there, you know? And I learned how to use Narcan just in case anything happened, or would call, you know, obviously. It's not like Jacinta is using because I'm there. It was like really the opposite. She was trying to hide it in more ways, you know, from me. But it was really a conversation about let's see beneath this, you know. If the drug is the smoke, where's the fire? You know, it's like, I truly believe that, like, I mean, drug addiction, you can't just fix drug addiction. It is like so much deeper than that. And that was always, and she knew that too. That was always the intent of this. Like, how did you end up here with your mother? And that kind of correlates to this drug addiction. So I'm not chasing the drug addiction. We're chasing, like, where's the deeper,
the trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you said it, the trust between the two of you it's incredible. I think it's very rare for films to be able to capture that. And it feels as though she is being very honest with herself, with you, in a way that I think is not as common anymore with reality TV. You know, like there's, it never feels like a performance. It feels like she's being very genuine in the way that she speaks about her family and speaks about her, you know, traumas, and doesn't speak about certain things too, right? So it's a really, like, it seems like a very special bond with you and like separate from whatever else with her family. And I also think, like, the relationship you build with her family separate from her is also unique to that, and how you're, because they all have to kind of buy into this project.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I spent so much time with all of them. Like, I spent so much time with Rick, you know, just sitting in his kitchen, just talking, you know, like, I spent so much time with, like, I spent a lot of time with Lucky. I mean, Lucky spent a lot, her boyfriend, he would call me all the time. Like, just, I was like, so many people were calling me just to talk. Like, you know, he would call, Billy would call, like, you know, it's, you have to spend that much time. So you become part of the family in a way, you know, like, I think, and then you're no longer just dropping in, you're like there for things, you know, and like, and I mean, Jacinta never hid for me. I mean, I would call her and she would be like, I'm here. Or she'd call me when she changed her number. Her number changed like 5 or 10 times in filming, you know? And yeah, people would call me on Christmas. And I mean, I don't know. I became really close, but I also just really care about them. Like, I just kind of fell in love with all of them. So I really enjoyed myself being with them, even if the drugs, after a while, because they're happening so often, it seems kind of normal, you know, like, it normalizes. Yeah, it normalizes. So it was, you know, and Jacinta's not like, she was, sometimes we could still communicate. It wasn't like, and there was lots of like joking around. It wasn't like she was high all the time, you know?
So I think we've got time for one more, but has Jacinta seen the film? And
yes,
the family, and tell us a little bit about that.
So Jacinta, I wanted to make sure she was, you know, she knew obviously about all the, we talked a lot during the process with the drug use stuff, but I wanted her to see the film and feel comfortable with it before we locked picture. So I showed her before we locked picture on it, and just let her know that if there was anything that she felt really uncomfortable with, or didn't feel like represented her story, or especially the trauma between her and her mother, if she was not like for that, then I would have removed it. I mean, that was, it was really important to me that she felt comfortable, because that's her experience and trauma, and she hasn't had those conversations with Rosemary yet. So she's watched it a number of times since then. And I showed her every time we watched it after that, we watched it with somebody. So she watched it with her dad and her aunt, and that was pretty amazing. because there was so much healing that seemed to happen in that viewing. I mean, her aunt was like apologetic to her for how she'd been in the past. And I think she really understood Jacinta so much better. They also did not know about that trauma. So that was something that they talked a lot about for the first time. And then Jacinta showed peers of hers at the prison who all like really connected to it. I mean, they all had such similar stories themselves that this story is just not, in a lot of ways, it's not unique, you know, like these women they went through the same experience. And so that was apparently I wasn't there for that one, but that was a really amazing experience for them. Rick's seen it, Todd watched it. He loved it. It just, I think, you know, they're all really excited for people to see it. I know that Jacinta's going to be part of our social impact campaign. She wants to help craft it, you know, so because she's the expert. And so she's hoping to travel with the film and be able to talk about her experience. And yeah.
Well, give her our best, please.
Yeah, I definitely will.
So we have to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Jessica, again, for this wonderful film and for bringing Jacinta to our lives. And we're just really thrilled to be able to include it in AFI Fest this year. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you at another film.